Welcome to our show here tonight. Welcome to We'll Sing and We'll Shout. I'm your host, Steve Hansen. We've got our faithful second in command on here with us tonight, Cheryl. And we're going to have fun. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about some things here on Throwback Thursday. So, sure, I will just tell you, like that Footloose poster. So I did a post on my Rebuke the Devourer, health themed kind of site today.
Uh-huh.
And I kept the poster out of it, and I was able to then advertise. So that it was the poster.
Interesting.
I don't know for sure about the tractor, but it was the poster that was causing problems.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that people don't think that Footloose is somehow, backing my efforts. But
Okay.
but for whatever reason, it's not a problem for me to share my Footloose poster with, my normal friends and family. You just can't use it as part of your kind of marketing effort
Yeah,
when
I
you're
guess so.
selling something. So I mean, it kind of makes sense. It does make sense. It's just it caught me off guard because I was like, how in the world does that matter?
Right.
But somehow their artificial intelligence system picked that up.
Oh,
I'm sure it wasn't some person,
right.
going through looking at these one at a time. So
Yep.
so per-
You're totally right.
well, of course, your brother is always totally right. Pretty good day today. Got some good things done. Got out to the rec center and practiced basketball and hit the weights really hard today. I was really moving around a lot of weight today. So I felt really good about that. I didn't have too much problem with people sitting around on the machines. There was this one guy who was sitting on the knee extension, the leg extension machine. And
Uh-huh.
I don't understand how people think they have a right to just go park themselves on a machine for 15 minutes when they actually use it for about 2 minutes,
Right.
and they use it
And
as
other people are waiting.
some form of hospice, and so anyway, I get more and more tempted to speak up and tell people,
Ask them to move along.
this is a rec center here, something ought to be moving. So either
Right.
you need to be moving or the machine needs to be moving, but something needs to move here.
Right.
Because this is not a place to just rest. But anyway, so far I've done a pretty good job of just keeping that to myself, but I'm gonna burst one of these days.
Yep.
So well, hey, so tonight, I wanted to get in here. You're sharing a lot of your stories about boyfriends and different relationships and whatnot, and I wanted to continue on with some of my dating experiences. And so I have one from the summer of 1982, but I realized that I really need to talk about this other experience. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this would have been the summer of 1981 that we went down to Cincinnati. You would have, I would
I
have
just barely
been,
got my license.
you just
We
barely,
like Dad handed me the keys like maybe a week after I got my license and told us to go.
so this would have been late August.
Yeah. I mean
Okay.
it freaked me out that he would like even trust me to drive that far when I had just become a new driver. But
And
he did
that's why you took me along. And did you
because I
know
was
Sherry,
scared.
Sherry McPeak at that point? I'm
Yeah, I knew
surprised you did.
Sherry from we knew each other from when she was in 8th grade and I was in 9th grade. We were both in Mr. Dundor's choir together. That's how we met.
I just wondered why I ended up going and not Sherry, but I know I was glad to go. I was glad to go down to Cincinnati and specifically Kings Island to go down and visit the Belfiore sisters. And
I guess I kind of liked you.
you kind of liked me, huh? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't always get that message, but that's good to know. That's good to know now. No, we actually did do a pretty good job of hanging out at times, and
Yeah, we got along for the most part. Sort
it
of like
wasn't
my Joey and
something.
Annie when they were that age. Like some days they were each other's best friends and other days they couldn't stand each other. So it's
Yeah,
kind of like that kind of vibe. But
it was probably some of that,
yep.
but we got along pretty well.
As we
Um,
aged, it got better and better.
Jumping forward to that summer of 1982, we made a trip to Tiffin in the van and picked up the boys and brought them home.
Right.
And we'll need to talk about that sometime, but we'll save that for another day. And
Yep.
on that trip, you actually let me drive, even though I didn't have my license yet.
Interesting. That was a nice sister.
So yeah. Um, which was interesting because that was just like a month after I had been in that accident and already had one ticket for not driving or for your driving without a license.
I guess I
So
probably figured you'd probably take a lot more care since you just wrecked something.
possibly, yeah,
Yep.
possibly. But anyway, that whole experience of going and picking up the boys, we need to talk about that in more detail because there's a lot of interesting things that surrounded all that. So,
Yeah.
but tell me uh tell me a little bit about your early history with the Belfiore sisters.
Well, I first got to know, I guess we should say the ages of the sisters. Cindy was a year ahead of me, so she was class of 81. And then Charm, or Charlene was her actual name, but we called her Charm. So it's like charm with a soft CH.
Right.
Charm was in my grade, and then Kathy was in your grade, I think. Or was she one below you? Was Kathy in your grade?
Kathy was in my grade, yes.
Okay. So for a long time, those were the only Belfiore sisters I knew about. But so Charm was in I first knew Charm in seventh grade, but she was not in my homeroom. And at Thompson School, when we went into seventh grade, you were in your homeroom with a group of kids, and you went through the whole day with that same group of kids. You just transferred from class to class, and you didn't really mingle. So maybe I would see her at recess. And I remember the seventh grade dance at the end of the school year. There was a big deal because Charm was dancing with Ted Stout, and they were the it couple. So
Right.
I didn't really get to know her, though. I just kind of looked at her from a distance and thought she was cute because she was one of the most popular girls in class. um, I didn't actually get to know Charm as a friend until I was a sophomore in high school, and she joined choir. She joined choir, and then her sister Cindy joined. I don't know if Cindy had been in there from the year before or not, but I remember when we did I went in my sophomore year and did um, audition for choral ears, which was kind of like the elite of the choir members that used to go around to like clubs and venues and stuff and sing fancy numbers. We used to do some choreography and stuff. We'd always meet before school in the morning and do all of our songs. And so it was probably like four bass, four tenors, four altos, and four sopranos. And so when we did the auditions for choral ears, I got in the group and Cindy got in as an alternate. I'm not sure Charm even got in that first year. So, um, but Charm became a choir member and we got to know each other that way. And then we joined drama, of course, drama. We were in drama club together, and she was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. I was a munchkin. And so we got to know each other through drama club and through choir. And eventually we became really good friends. I don't know if it was my junior year or what, but I actually did go to their house and spend the night a few times. And I
Hmm.
guess that's when I got to know the younger sister, Chrissy. Um,
I never
but,
got to do that. And
yeah, they didn't invite you, Steve.
I never got to go over and spend the night. I
They
don't
told me,
know
keep that creepy brother of yours away from us.
I don't know what was going on there.
So anyway, Charm and I became really good friends, and just,
W
we had a mutual respect for one another. There'd be times when she would have problems, with different things, and she would seek my advice. And I always felt really good about that she, trusted me enough to come to me with, important questions and stuff. So um, we just were friends all the way through high school pretty much. And then once I went off to college and, she kind of went her way, we kind of lost touch with each other. I think I might have seen her at the fifth class reunion. Not sure if she was even there that night, honestly. I don't know that I have any pictures of her there, so she might not have even been there then. But
Hmm.
we were Facebook friends for a while, and then we kind of had a falling out, so I unfriended her. But
Uh-huh.
that's about it for me and Charm. Me and Cindy are still friends.
Right.
So,
What
yep.
summer was it? Was it this summer of your after your sophomore year that you three went to the wedding and sang
Yes,
that
it
song
was because
Growth?
it was our sophomore drama teacher, Miss Smith, who ended up getting married to the FFA teacher. What was his name? Do you remember?
Steve Sprague.
Sprague. Yeah, I thought it was Mr. Sprague. So they got married in Indiana, like Fort Wayne area, maybe. And so mom and dad drove me and Lori Palmerston and Mavis Church. No, me, Lori
I wish
Palmerston and Charm.
it was
The three of
Charm. Yeah.
us, yeah, the three of us sang it.
And
So they drove us down there and we stayed at a hotel and we sang at Miss Smith's wedding.
well, I went along on that trip.
Yeah,
I, I was along on that deal for sure. Yeah. So that was between. So I never had Steve Sprague because they both left after they got married that summer. They both left Bellevue High School, and
right,
then that's when Mr. Huffman, Robert Bob Huffman,
right.
came in as voice
We were
teacher.
so sad to lose Miss Smith. That was really hard on all of us because we just loved
So,
her.
so who became your? We're kind of veering off in different directions here, but who became your drama teacher after she left?
Um, there was a lady my sophomore year that had long dark hair, and I cannot remember her name. She was slender and pretty, and she had long dark hair, and she was really into sewing. And we did The King and I that year, and she helped all of us make hoop skirts. Like we took a bunch of hula hoops and made skirts and pushed the hula hoops through so that we could make hoop skirts. So I remember being in her class after school doing that, and so she taught drama. And then the year after that, my senior year, I think Mrs. Guerrera came in and took that over.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
yeah, so we had a different lady each year that I was in high school, but I liked them all. They were all really good. But our the guy that led our plays my junior and senior year was Gertstein. He
Okay.
he was the one who did the plays in the evening, but the drama classes at school were those other ladies.
I didn't realize Mrs. Guerrero had been your drama teacher
Yeah,
there. So,
my English teacher too.
right. Yeah.
So I had her for two classes.
Right.
So we got
Um,
close.
yeah. And well, and I'll talk about Mrs. Guerrero sometime too, but we won't delve into that tonight. But I will say this, I was when you were in seventh grade there at Thompson, and when you first were getting to know Charm, um, that's when I first became aware of these Belfiore people. But I was only aware of, Cindy and Charm at that point because that's all you knew about.
Right.
Uh, I would see, so I was in fifth grade there at Thompson. And as you were going back and forth from gym class or, whatever, you would see seventh graders. And I know I saw them a couple times that year, but it's not like I have, vivid memories or I can point out specific places or anything like that. But I do know that I became aware that, this is a really fascinating person, even as a fifth grader. So what
And I
was
forgot
amazing
to
for me,
mention that they sang as a trio of sisters and they sang beautifully. So I
right,
guess we can bring
right.
that up in a little bit, but
Right, yeah, and that's of course why we were going down to Kings Island. But
mhm.
so when I showed up there in seventh grade, 2 years later, and I was in section, and that's what they called those. I was in section two. I was in section two because section two and section three were band sections, and I was playing my trumpet. Um, and lo and behold, there was this girl named Kathy Belfiore in my section, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. I've got one of these Belfiore girls right here in my own section.
Right.
So I started to get to know Kathy some, and we didn't become like, close friends, but we did become friends. And that fall, sometime there in November or whatever, we went down to Washington, D.C. And she was, just kind of jokingly, but sincerely too, she was kind of like, get me something, and she's thinking like, 50-cent trinket or something. But I got her,
Like a
but
keychain.
we went to Washington, D.C. and saw all sorts of things. And I'm sure mom and dad went to the temple while we were down there too.
Mhm.
Was that the trip that we went to Mount Vernon? I guess I'm not
I believe
sure.
it was. They really gave us the grand tour of DC. We saw everything. We saw all the
Well,
monuments and
we had gone earlier in 74,
yeah,
and
I
now
know
this
when the temple was dedicated.
and this was 78. So we did make two trips down there. But
Yep.
whatever it was,
I
I
remember
came
going to the
home
Smithsonian and all sorts of stuff.
and I think I spent like $5 on this Ziggy t-shirt, and it had something to do with Washington, D.C. on it, but was Ziggy in Washington, D.C. And I think I got her a card too. So I really kind of, you know, way overdid this gift from what anything that she was anticipating. And I think she was, a little shell shocked by that. But
Mhm.
but then it kind of became my thing that, at Christmas or Valentine's or whatever, I would get her Ziggy cards.
Mhm.
And that was that way kind of throughout junior high. Now once we got to high school, that kind of faded away. But that was kind of my thing there with Kathy. The other thing I'll say about Kathy, I think I mentioned this to you before one time, but one time we were sitting there in study hall and it must have been sometime maybe early December, and she was playing around with my hair, and those were back in the days when I actually had hair. And at that point in my life, I just hung my hair straight down. You know,
Right.
everything was just straight down. And Bill Stevens barbershop up there would keep me, cleaned up and looking good. And that was just kind of my thing. But she was playing around with my hair and parted it in the middle. And she was telling me, oh, you should really part your hair in the middle and whatever.
It looks
So,
cooler.
so yeah, yeah. And so, I've got this girl, Kathy, basically rock star there in my seventh grade class telling me I should part my hair in the middle. So what do you do? So I went home, and the next day or soon thereafter, I came to school with my hair parted in the middle. And I remember coming up the stairs there, like you would get off the bus behind the school and you would come up that middle set of stairs. I remember coming up that middle set of stairs that would bring you right up close to the gym there,
Yep.
right close to the auditorium. And there was Kathy and some other girl, and she was just so impressed, or so, I don't know. There was just like
That
she
you would
couldn't
actually
believe,
listen to her advice.
yeah, that I had done that. Um, but I did do that every day after that, and I did my hair that way as long as I've had hair. Kathy Buffuri changed my hairstyle at age, let's see, I was 12 years old
Yep.
because she changed my hairstyle at age 12, and I stuck with that for the rest of my life until I ran out of hair.
Right.
Now, now I've pretty much gone down back to the just let it hang thing. But
Mhm.
but that was Kathy's early impact on me. So, but I never, Kathy and I never dated. I certainly would have wanted that, but it just never materialized in that way. We were always just friends. Um, but I would dance with her at junior high dances and, things like that. Not like all the time, but I mean, like, one
Right.
time during the event, I would dance with Kathy and I would dance with Jackie and I would dance with, a dozen other girls. So she was always on my card, she was always on my list.
Mhm.
Um, so that was kind of my experience with Kathy, and I always wanted to date her, but it never worked out during junior high. And then when we got to high school, or even before high school, even in eighth grade, she started dating Duffy Melky, dating boys, from the older class. And at that point, I kind of felt like I was now out of the game because I couldn't compete with that.
Well, Duffy
So,
Milky was pretty good looking.
so I kind
I'd
of
have
had to,
dated him if you'd ask me.
I had to give up. Yeah, I couldn't compete with Duffy Melky. So
No,
I
one
knew
of the
that I
best
was
looking boys
now,
in our school.
I knew that I was now out of the game as far as, Kathy went. But I was kind of, so you got your license at age 16. This would have been 1980.
So,
This was August of 1980
right.
that we decided to go down. You decided to go down to Cincinnati to visit the Belfuries because they were singing. They were walking around.
They were singing in the park as a trio.
Yeah, they were walking around Kings Island and they were singing.
Yeah, and they
And you
both,
invited,
Kathy and Cindy both played the guitar, and then Charm was the lead vocals. And they had the
right,
cutest costumes. They had these sundresses that were like rainbow stripes that they
right,
wore that, the Kings Island provided for them. But they would do probably 6 shows a day where they'd sing for about 20 minutes and then they'd go have a break and then they'd come back out and sing again. And I really
right.
wanted to see them do their thing because I liked them.
Yeah, yeah. And I really wanted to go with you because I liked Kathy.
Right.
Um, so we buzzed down to Cincinnati. I didn't realize I had forgotten about the thing of you being a brand new driver. That's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we buzz all the way down to Cincinnati, and they're staying at some rented house there.
Right.
And I'm kind of excited about this because I know that I'll kind of have Kathy in not necessarily a one-on-one situation, but a situation where there won't be any other boys around. And so maybe I'll get a chance to talk to her a little more. Like once she started dating Duffy, my opportunity to really talk and interact with her pretty much disappeared. And of course, I was dating Heather and then Christy Sutherland during that same eighth grade year. So I was, kind of busy with my own things going on.
Right.
Um, and I'll have to say, Kathy had a lot going on, but so did Christy Sutherland. So I don't feel like, I don't feel like
You lost out too much.
I don't think I was lacking too much. But anyway,
Right.
so we buzzed down to Cincinnati, as it turns out, Kathy kind of has some kind of boyfriend action going on down there, and she doesn't talk to me or interact with me at all the whole time we're there. I mean, like she walks by me in the living room or whatever, and you and
You
I
just
think
sleep
are
on the
just
floor in the living room?
I think we're just sleeping on the floor in the living room, which
Yeah, I'm
is,
pretty sure that's how it worked out.
which is fine. The
Yep.
thing I remember about her boyfriend, he wasn't like super tall, but he was probably a little taller than me, pretty slender guy, and he would bring his bike into their house because it was an area where if he left his bike outside, it would get stolen. Um, what is so funny about that, Cheryl, is that's exactly what happened to my bike when I parked it beside the Belfiore grandparents' home out in Santa Barbara, California. My bike got
Right.
stolen.
Right.
So it's like I should have learned. It's just funny how that little thing circled around, and all those years later, my bike got stolen. And if I had brought it inside and learned
It would
from
have
that
been fine.
experience, I would have had my bike. But anyway,
Hmm.
so we get up, we spend the night, we get up the next day, and it's time to go to Kings Island. And you just wanted to kind of go walk around with the Belfiore sisters and see them do their thing. But I came down to Kings Island because I wanted to ride the Beast and go experience the park. And so little
I do
Chrissy,
remember riding some rides with you, like the silly little train and stuff like that. Like
right?
between their musical numbers, I would come and ride some of the rides with you.
Okay, so I would have been 13 years old because I would have been turning 14 in September because you
Right.
just turned 16. I didn't
Right.
realize that. I didn't realize how young I was,
Yeah.
but I would have been turning 14, and that would have put Chrissy at 10, maybe 11 ish,
She was pretty young. Yeah.
because
I have pictures of that, and she was a lot smaller than you and I.
she was 4 years behind me, but she offered to take me around the park,
Plus,
and
she'd been
so
there enough; she would have known.
yeah, she had not ridden the Beast at that point, but she talked like she wanted to, and she and I spent the whole day walking around Kings Island, and she knew the good rides to go on and whatever, and we just had a really fun time walking around Kings Island, and I'm walking around with this cute little Belfiore girl, and even though she's like 3 or 4 years younger than me, um, you can still see, this is going to grow up to be a really cute girl someday, like you
She
can
was
see that.
beautiful, just
Um,
like we all were.
and so, we're walking around the park, and we wanted to ride the Beast, but it just, anytime we would walk by, the line was just always so long. So we kept putting that off. But finally, I want to say maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, finally we're like, okay, we got to go get in this line or this isn't going to happen.
Right. We're
And
not going
and
to.
she seemed totally interested and excited about this, just like I was. And so we get in this line, and we were in that line for over 2.5 hours. I don't think we
Yeah.
were in it for three, but we were in there over 2.5 hours. I think it's the longest I've ever waited for anything like that. Um, Probably twice as long as anything I've ever waited for. But as night starts to set in, because this is August now, so you're getting to the point where summer is shutting down earlier in the day, and so as night starts to set in, all of a sudden the crowd gets really rowdy, and there's all this chanting and screaming up on the platform every time a group of cars goes out, and every time a group of cars goes in, everybody's chanting and screaming, and I can see little Chrissy starting to get nervous
Hmm.
and grow more and more uncomfortable as we get closer and closer to this ride. She doesn't say anything because she doesn't want to look like a wimp. But at
Right.
the same time, I can tell that this little girl is getting really uncertain about this whole commitment to ride this beast. So, but I'm determined. Like we are not going to wait for 2.5 hours and then not get on this thing.
Hmm.
So, she's, she sucks it up and sits down there beside me, and then she did the sweetest little thing. She asked me to hold her hand, and I was like, wow, I have never, held a Belfiore sister's hand before. I mean, I danced with Kathy a few times, but so, uh, so I held little Chrissy's hand throughout that whole ride on the Beast, and the Beast goes out through this wooded area, and so at night, that is like pretty intimidating. I mean,
Yeah. It sounds
me,
scary.
me at age 14 was feeling all of it. So I can only
I was
imagine
probably
what
worried about you guys, would be my guess.
I can only imagine what she at age 11 was going through. But
Right.
I held onto her hand, little hand, the whole time through that, and then we got, we came back in the thing, and then I let go of her hand, and that was the end of our little romantic adventure there. But and then we came back and found you guys, and but that was the but I have to consider that day with Chrissy a date because I held her hand. If it hadn't
Okay.
been for the if it hadn't been for the hand holding, then it wouldn't have been a date. It would have just been us walking around the park.
Right.
But when you've got pretty serious physical interaction going like that, then that constitutes a date. So that was my only date with. Unfortunately for me, that was my only date with a Belfiore sister.
Yeah.
Um, I was supposed to, when I was a senior, uh, I got Kathy a card at Valentine's Day. She wasn't dating anybody then. The other older boys were all gone now. I got her a Ziggy card for the first time in like 4 years. And that was kind of fun. And she appreciated that. And one morning she was supposed to come out and help me milk the cows. And I was supposed to like go pick her up in the farm truck. And it's only 3 miles uptown, so it wasn't any big deal. I was going to go pick her up at like 6:30 in the morning and bring her out and milk the cows. Um, and something went on with the alarm clock. Like I know that sounds cliche, but honestly, for some reason I didn't get the alarm clock set right. Whatever, the alarm clock didn't go off, and Dad would do this occasionally, maybe once, or twice a month. On a Saturday morning, Dad would just let me sleep in, and he would milk the cows because I had milked them all week long.
Yep.
And we hadn't talked about that the night before, but sometimes he would just do that. And so probably when he saw that I wasn't getting up, he went ahead and took the initiative to go milk the cows instead of waking me up. So I wake up at 8 o'clock and I look over at the clock and I'm like, oh crap, you know.
Yep.
So I call Kathy, and she's been up since 6 a.m. waiting for me to come get her to come
Mm,
milk the cows.
that's
And
terrible.
and so I blew my opportunity to go on a cow milking date with Kathy there.
Yep.
Um, but uh, but what was and I've talked about this experience where they came to Southern California. This would have been May of 1986. I got a call from Kathy or Cindy, I don't know which one, saying,
Hmm.
hey, we want to come out to California, visit Southern California. We want to go to Disneyland, and then we're going to go up to Santa Barbara to where our grandparents live. And at first it was like, you know, um, would you be available to like go to Disneyland with us? At first it was just kind of like, oh, hey, we're coming out, we'd like to maybe see you. But
Uh-huh.
then as we got deeper into the conversation, then it became, hey, we're coming out. Could we stay with you?
Uh-huh.
And I was staying with that family, the Bledsoes, then, and I had just had my younger brothers out, so it was a little awkward to go back and say, "Oh, just completely out of
Now
the
I've got
blue,
some girlfriends coming.
I've got two girls who want to come, spend the night here for 2 or 3 or 4 nights or whatever it was." And the Bledsoes, they were totally fine with it. I mean, they just ended up sleeping on the floor in the living room, but
Just like we did.
that's yeah. And I think they felt like it was kind of like we owed them one anyway,
Right.
because they had come down to Kings Island. So it was like, we need to cash in you know, this return ticket here.
Right.
So, but what was ironic about that one, when it came time to pack up my car, well, actually, so when Dave and Ben came out, it did make me a little homesick, but I was not, when they left, I was not thinking about going back home. I was planning to stay in Southern California. I was supposed to be meeting with the bishop to get my mission papers in. There was some wealthy couple, older couple out there who was going to pay for my mission. Um, I was planning to stay out there, but for whatever reason, when Kathy and Cindy came out and they needed a way to get to Santa Barbara, which of course is just north of Santa Barbara, Santa Rosa. I'm sorry, it's Santa Rosa. I should have been saying that. Santa Rosa is just north of San Francisco. They needed a way to get up there. I mean, I could have put them on a bus. There would have been different ways to get them up there. But I was like, you know what? I just felt inspired because they were coming out that I would pack up and go home.
Right.
And so they are the reason why I came home that summer.
Interesting.
And so as we're packing up the car, and I've got my 10-speed bike, and I've got a certain amount of stuff that would fit in my car. But with their extra stuff, everything that I wanted to put in the trunk wouldn't fit. And I wanted to leave the back seat wide open so that, two people could be sitting in the sleep in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted everything to fit in the trunk, and I felt strongly about this. Like, I don't want, stuff in the back seat. So, but the only way to fit everything in the trunk was to take this spare tire out of the trunk. And I just put brand new Goodyear tires on this thing like a year earlier. And I just, in my mind, I'm like, what in the world could possibly happen to these Goodyear tires between here and Ohio? There's no reason. And I had extra spares at home, extra snow tires that could be used as spares. So it's like there's no reason for me to feel like I need to haul this spare tire all the way back to Ohio. I'm just going to leave this here with the Bledsoes, and that way I can get Kathy and Cindy's stuff into the trunk. So we get everything in there. We go spend the day at Disneyland, and then we leave Disneyland late at night, and we drive through the night up to Santa Rosa. And I drove most of the night, but around 2 or 3 a.m., Cindy took over, and then I slept in the back until the sun came up. So that was our late night trip from Disneyland to Santa Rosa.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the day at Disneyland hardly at all, but I do know that I wasn't very impressed. I really wasn't that impressed with
Well, we
Disneyland.
were used to Cedar Point.
But yeah, when you're used to Cedar Point and you're interested in the thrill rides, Disney doesn't have a whole lot to offer you.
No, they're more
So-
about the shows.
So and then we got up to Santa Rosa, and of course we got up there mid-morning or something, so we must have slept that day. I don't know. But the next day we went into San Francisco. We went to Alcatraz. We went to some shops around there. We just kind of did the San Francisco thing. And the day after that, we went up to the giant Sequoia Park. And we got to see the giant trees. But as we're driving around there was some tree that was dropping these little buds that had like thorns in them.
Yeah.
And I'll be darned if one of those thorns didn't get into one of my brand new Goodyear tires and give us a flat tire. And so now I'm out here in the middle of a national park, 20, 30 miles away from civilization. We've got a flat tire and I've got no spare. So anyway, I won't go any further with that story, but that was my experience there dating a Belfiore, and I just wanted to get that one slid in there before I go further and talk about this next story with Tammy and Sherry here, which will probably happen next Thursday night. So
Right.
do you have I did a lot of talking there. Do you have anything else you want to throw in here at the end?
No, not really. I mean, they were such a good family. They're still a good family. In fact, when I took Dad to see Fiddler on the Roof just a few days ago, there was Cindy there with her dad. And Cindy
Oh, really?
was the drama club president for the class of 81. And then when we had the drama club banquet, they voted on the new drama club president, and I became the new drama club president. So Cindy passed it on to me. So we kind of have that bond. That we were both drama club presidents. So I was laughing about the fact that I saw her in the audience and waved at her. She had her dad, Nick, with her. I'm there in Bellevue seeing the same play with my dad, Bob. And I was just like, how many years, 45 years later, the two of us are still in Bellevue, still interested in theater. And then we had our dads with us. I mean, it was just kind of this weird moment where it was like, it all came back. And so I waved her at the audience, and Dad was being so weird. I didn't even stay for the whole show. I ended up leaving at intermission, so I didn't get to talk to her after. But I Facebook messaged her, and I said,
Yeah.
here we were at the theater with our dads, and I just, reminded her of our shared history of being drama club president. And
Do you know how
she told me that drama club president vote wasn't even close, that I was way out in front of everybody. So
Oh,
I
wow.
think it's because you had kids in your grade that knew me, and I was very friendly with the underclassmen because a lot of them I knew because they were your friends.
Right.
And I just had never been like one of those kids that was like nasty to the underclassmen. I was always kind to everybody and tried to make friends with everybody. So eventually it paid off. And I still have that. They hung this paper on the drama club door that said who got the president. And I still have that paper in my scrapbook. I took it down.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that my popularity is probably what carried you to victory there. All the kids were like, "Oh, that's Steve Hansen's sister."
Yeah, we should vote for her.
we're going to want to vote for her. So yeah, that all, that all kind of chimes in and makes sense there. How was I'm sure it was hard to tell from a distance. How was Nick doing? How
Oh, he
old
looked
is
pretty good. I saw him go out to his car at the intermission. I don't know if he was going to smoke or take a drink or what, but I don't know. He went out to his car at intermission. I noticed that because I
right,
was leaving with dad, so I saw him going out there.
right.
But at the end of my senior year, I actually ran the drama club banquet because you have to like award all these awards and everything. And so I was basically the spokesman for the whole thing. And about a week later, I get this message in one of my classrooms that I needed to go see the principal. And it was Doug Warnes at the time. And I was like, why do I need to go see the principal? What have I done? Because every time you want to go see the principal, you figure you've done something wrong, right? So so I go in there and talk to Mr. Warnes, and he said he was so impressed with my public speaking abilities, and he really thought that maybe I should go into, that kind of an area. And he goes, "You just controlled the whole room, and you did such a good job kind of monitoring everybody." And he said, "You were very funny." And so anyway, he was just like giving me this nice pat on the back, which was unusual, but I just thought it was nice that he went out of his day to do that for me.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yep.
I'll have to say I didn't have that experience, but that's okay. I got to go see Mr. Cox, and that was for different reasons. But
Yes, land shark. Good.
all
Here
right.
comes land shark.
Well, hey, tomorrow is fantastic Friday, or whatever we want to throw on it. I don't know what direction we're going, but we'll likely go somewhere with it. I'm going to get myself pulled together and go play some basketball here at the church here at
And my son
9:15.
called while I was on this with you. So if you noticed, I disappeared for a second. I was on the phone with Chris telling him, um, I'm on with Uncle Steve. I'll call you back in a minute.
There was some interference. I did pick up on that.
So now
Would,
I'm
would
going to have to call my son.
well, see if he wants to come on tomorrow night.
All right.
See
I'll ask him.
if he'd be game tomorrow night. It would be 7 o'clock his time there in California.
All right.
And we'll get him on and we'll talk about Apple and accessibility and things like that.
All right.
So, all right, sounds good. You get some rest.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.